It didn't come with a warning. There was no countdown, no long debate on TV, no slow rollout to help people prepare, just one press conference, one official statement. And suddenly, millions of Americans over the age of 65 were forced to ask a question they never expected to ask this soon. Will I still be allowed to drive? Not 10 years from now, not someday, but soon. Because what federal transportation officials revealed was not a small update. It wasn't a paperwork change, and it wasn't a routine safety reminder. It was a fundamental shift in how senior drivers will be judged, tested, and possibly removed from the road, starting February 2026. For many older Americans, driving isn't just about getting from one place to another. It's freedom, it's independence, it's the ability to live life on your own terms. And overnight, that freedom was placed under a microscope. What made this moment even more unsettling wasn't just what was announced, it was how fast it happened. How quietly it was prepared, and how many people it impacts all at once. More than 50 million licensed drivers, millions of families, entire communities, especially rural ones, where driving isn't optional, it's survival. And as of today, that reality has officially changed. Transportation officials had hinted that something might be coming. Advocacy groups worried about it. Some seniors dismissed it as rumor or political noise. But this time, the rumors became policy. Not after years of hearings, not after state-by-state debates, but through one federal framework that crossed a line many hoped would never be crossed. Because once that line is crossed, it doesn't just redraw rules, it redraws lives. The message from Washington was clear. Senior drivers are no longer viewed strictly as individuals. They are now treated as a category, one to be assessed, tested, filtered, and reviewed again and again. And when rules change this fast, it's never accidental. It signals urgency, pressure, intent. Before we talk about the backlash and why it exploded almost instantly, it's important to understand what was actually announced and why it matters so deeply. This wasn't framed as a suggestion. It wasn't optional guidance for states. It was introduced as a comprehensive federal framework, setting the tone for how licensing agencies across the country will operate going forward. And when federal regulators move this decisively, without years of public debate, it means they believe something has changed enough to justify action right now. That's why this announcement sent shockwaves through Washington, state governments, and senior communities nationwide. Not because it came out of nowhere, but because it confirmed that something many hoped would stay hypothetical is now very real. Before we go further, let me briefly explain why we're walking through this carefully, to help you understand what's really being decided, how it affects you personally, and what's happening behind the scenes right now. No panic, no speculation, just clarity, at a moment when clarity matters more than ever. Because once you hear what's inside this new framework, you'll understand why senior advocacy groups reacted immediately, and why this has become one of the most politically charged transportation decisions in decades. And in just a moment, I'll break down the 4 changes that triggered nationwide outrage, changes that could directly affect your ability to renew your license. Stay with me. What the new rules actually do. Federal transportation officials confirm that, unless blocked or changed, this framework will begin taking effect in February 2026. And here's what it includes. First, mandatory cognitive screening at age 65. Starting at age 65, license renewal will no longer be based only on vision tests or driving records. Instead, seniors will face mandatory cognitive assessments. These aren't simple questionnaires. They are designed to measure reaction time, memory recall, and decision-making under simulated driving conditions. In real terms, that means your ability to renew your license will now depend on how you score against standardized cognitive benchmarks. Benchmarks many seniors have never been required to meet before, even if you've driven safely for decades. Second, shortened renewal cycles. The renewal timeline is changing dramatically. Ages 65-74, renewal every 4 years instead of 8 ages. 75 plus, renewal every 2 years. That may sound administrative, but in reality, it means more frequent testing, more fees, more chances for delays, restrictions, or denials. Each renewal becomes another checkpoint. Third, mandatory road tests after any at-fault accident. Under the new framework, any at-fault accident for drivers over 70, even a low-speed fender bender or parking lot incident, can trigger a full driving re-evaluation. No exceptions for severity, no consideration for decades of safe driving. One mistake could mean retesting from scratch. Fourth, physician reporting requirements. Doctors will now be expected to report patients they believe pose a potential driving risk. This shifts responsibility in a way that deeply concerns both seniors and medical professionals. Doctors worry about liability, patients worry about honesty. Trust becomes fragile when medical visits carry licensing consequences. Taken together, these measures represent the largest federal-level shift in senior driving policy in over 40 years. Officials say it's about safety. Advocates say it's about assumptions. Under this framework, age becomes the trigger, not demonstrated impairment. A healthy 65-year-old with a clean record faces hurdles that a younger driver with known issues might never face. That shift, from presumed capable to presumed questionable, is the heart of the backlash. And that's why the response was immediate. The backlash and the power behind it. Senior advocacy groups didn't wait. Within hours of the announcement, organizations that rarely move together were aligned, mobilized, and confrontational, not emotional, strategic. They understood something critical. Once age-based testing becomes normal, reversing it later becomes nearly impossible. Statements released the same day called the framework discriminatory, overreaching, and legally vulnerable. But more importantly, legal teams began preparing challenges focused on how the policy was built, not whether safety matters. That distinction matters. They argued the framework violates equal protection by using age as evidence, not behavior. Within 3 hours, legal action was underway. Phone banks activated, email campaigns launched, meetings with state officials scheduled. Transportation analysts noticed something unusual. Advocacy groups skipped the early stages and went straight to escalation. Why? Because once licenses are revoked, the damage is done. Independence doesn't come back easily. Behind the scenes, another force moved quickly: the insurance industry. Major insurers have long supported stricter senior driving rules. Less exposure means lower payouts. Standardized benchmarks make underwriting easier. Industry groups praised the framework within hours. That raised red flags. When agencies, insurers, and select medical organizations move together, incentives are usually involved. Medical associations soon raised concerns too. Many cognitive tests were never designed to predict real-world driving. Lab reaction time is not the same as judgment at a four-way stop. Memory recall on a screen is not decades of experience. As these concerns surfaced, the narrative shifted. This was no longer just about safety. It became about civil liberties. And once policy enters that territory, defending it quietly becomes impossible. What happens next and why this isn't over? The timing couldn't be worse. This announcement landed during an election cycle when regulatory overreach is already a flashpoint. Seniors are one of the largest and most reliable voting blocs in the country. And they noticed. Emergency hearings are now being discussed. Congressional committees are demanding data. Lawmakers who quietly supported similar ideas are suddenly cautious. Behind closed doors, officials are recalculating. Scale it back and look weak. Delay it and invite lawsuits. Push forward and face years of legal battles. None are easy. Meanwhile, state-level bills have already appeared, some expanding the framework even further. That strategy is risky because backlash at the state level can stall everything, and seniors are not disengaged, they are organized, they vote, and when independence is threatened, they respond. This issue is no longer just about driving. It's about dignity, about whether experience is respected, about whether policy treats people as individuals or averages. February 2026 is close enough to demand action now, and whatever happens next, one thing is already clear. Seniors have drawn a line. They will not accept quiet erosion of independence. They will not surrender freedom without a fight, and they will remember who stood where. If you or someone you love is over 60, comment info below and stay tuned because the next updates could directly affect your rights. This story isn't over. It's just beginning.